Hey guys, Dr. Berg here. Let's talk about something that's been marketed to us as the ultimate health food, fruit. But here's the truth. Not all fruits are created equal. Some of them are spiking your blood sugar, wrecking your liver, and pushing you out of fat burning mode without you even realizing it. In this video, I'll show you 3 fruits you should never touch, especially if you're trying to lose weight or improve your metabolic health, and 3 fruits you must eat because they actually support fat loss, stabilize insulin, and feed your mitochondria. Let's break it down. Insulin spiking fruits are among the most misleading dietary choices people make, largely because we've been told our entire lives that fruit is healthy. While that may have been true in the past, the reality today is far more complex and concerning, especially if you're dealing with insulin resistance, prediabetes, or stubborn belly fat that just won't go away. When we talk about insulin spiking fruits, we're referring to those that are exceptionally high in sugar, particularly fructose and glucose, 2 simple sugars that wreak havoc on your endocrine system and liver when consumed in concentrated forms. Let's start with how your body actually handles these sugars. Unlike glucose, which is utilized by every cell in your body and triggers insulin secretion directly from the pancreas, fructose is metabolized primarily by the liver. Now, that might sound harmless, but here's the critical piece. Fructose doesn't spike insulin directly, but it indirectly contributes to some of the most destructive metabolic pathways. When you eat a fruit high in fructose, like grapes, pineapples, bananas, or mangoes, the liver gets flooded with that sugar, and because there's no immediate insulin response, people often assume it's safe. But in reality, what the liver does is convert that fructose into triglycerides, fat, which then accumulates in the liver and bloodstream, leading to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, high cholesterol, and eventually insulin resistance. This is a slow burn, a stealth process that goes unnoticed for years while the body's metabolic machinery breaks down silently. And here's another twist. Many of these fruits have been genetically modified over decades to be sweeter, larger, and less fibrous than they ever were in nature. That means we're not eating the same fruits our ancestors did. We're eating sugar bombs that resemble candy more than anything found in the wild. Grapes today have nearly double the sugar content they had 50 years ago. A single banana can contain 27 grams of sugar. That's more than a scoop of ice cream, and we haven't even factored in the insulin response yet. Every time your blood sugar spikes, your pancreas releases insulin to lower it. But the more frequently you do this, the more insulin resistant your cells become, forcing the pancreas to release even more insulin next time. This vicious cycle traps you in fat destruggle mode. It shuts down fat burning completely, raises cortisol levels, triggers inflammation, and keeps your energy levels on a constant roller coaster. You get hungry sooner, you crave more sugar, you gain weight, even when you're eating healthy. And what's worse is that the high sugar load from these fruits not only spikes insulin, but also leads to glycation. This is when sugar molecules attach to proteins in your body, damaging them and accelerating aging at the cellular level. Glycation is behind wrinkles, stiff joints, and the degeneration of blood vessels and nerve tissues. But it doesn't stop there. Insulin spiking fruits also feed harmful gut bacteria. These bacteria thrive on sugar, especially fructose. When they're well fed, they multiply rapidly, crowding out beneficial bacteria and compromising your gut lining. This can lead to leaky gut, food sensitivities, systemic inflammation, and even autoimmune issues. And consider the hormonal ripple effect. Insulin is not just a blood sugar regulator. It's a master hormone that interacts with cortisol, estrogen, testosterone, and even your thyroid. So when you constantly spike insulin with high sugar fruits, you're creating a hormonal hurricane that disrupts your entire endocrine system. This is why so many people experience fatigue, mood swings, weight gain, and skin issues without ever realizing the fruit they eat every morning is the hidden culprit. And to make matters worse, many people consume these fruits in concentrated or blended forms like smoothies or juices, which completely remove the fiber that would normally slow the absorption of sugar into the bloodstream. When you strip the fiber and drink pure fruit juice, even if it's natural or organic, you're flooding your system with a sugar rush so fast and potent that it might as well be soda. The glycemic load skyrockets. The insulin surge is immediate, and the fat storage process begins, especially in the abdominal area. It's this exact mechanism that explains why some people who eat clean and load up on fruit can't lose weight, feel constantly tired, and develop blood sugar problems later in life. They're unknowingly sabotaging their metabolism with foods they believe are healthy. This is why it's essential to question the one-size-fits-all narrative surrounding fruit and recognize that not all fruits are metabolically equal. Some fruits are nutrient dense, low in sugar, and support your health goals, but others, especially the ones that spike insulin, should be treated with the same caution as candy or baked goods, particularly if you're over 40, overweight, or dealing with any blood sugar irregularities. Low sugar, high nutrient fruits are often the missing link in a health conscious diet, especially for those navigating the terrain of weight loss, insulin resistance, or chronic fatigue. When chosen correctly, these fruits can provide powerful healing benefits without triggering the blood sugar roller coaster that most conventional fruits cause. What sets these fruits apart isn't just their reduced carbohydrate content, it's their incredibly dense profile of antioxidants, phytonutrients, enzymes, fiber, and essential minerals, all of which work synergistically to enhance mitochondrial health, reduce oxidative stress, and support cellular regeneration. The key to understanding the value of these fruits lies in how the body processes sugar and nutrients. In contrast to high glycemic fruits that release glucose or fructose rapidly into the bloodstream, low sugar fruits release their minimal sugar content slowly thanks to their rich fiber content and lower overall glycemic load. This allows the body to absorb their nutrients without overwhelming the pancreas or triggering large insulin spikes. It creates a metabolic state that supports fat burning instead of fat storage. A great example is the humble raspberry, which contains only about 5 grams of sugar per cup, but packs over 8 grams of fiber. A powerful combination that promotes gut health, slows digestion, stabilizes glucose, and fosters a prolonged feeling of satiety. And it doesn't stop there. Raspberries are loaded with ellagic acid, a polyphenol that has been shown to reduce inflammation, support liver detoxification, and even exhibit anti-cancer properties in some studies. This is what makes low-sugar fruits so unique. They offer therapeutic compounds and quantities that rival medicinal herbs, and they do so without overburdening the body's insulin-producing mechanisms. Blueberries, another standout in this category, contain anthocyanins, which are powerful antioxidants that not only protect brain function, but have also been shown to enhance insulin sensitivity. In fact, studies suggest that regular consumption of wild blueberries can improve glucose regulation and reduce markers of oxidative stress, making them an excellent choice for those managing type 2 diabetes or metabolic syndrome. But here's the catch. We're not talking about the overly sweet, commercially farmed versions that are engineered for maximum flavor and minimum fiber. The best results come from wild or organic berries that grow in their natural form, small, a little tart, and packed with nutritional punch. Similarly, blackberries and strawberries offer a broad spectrum of polyphenols and vitamins while keeping the sugar content exceptionally low. They nourish the gut lining, feed beneficial microbes, and help reduce inflammation in the body, which is critical for people dealing with autoimmune issues, brain fog, or joint pain. Another underrated powerhouse is the avocado. Technically a fruit, though it behaves nothing like the sugary varieties people typically associate with fruit. Avocados are rich in monounsaturated fats, potassium, magnesium, and glutathione, a master antioxidant that supports liver function and DNA repair. And the nearly zero sugar content means avocados have zero impact on insulin, making them an essential fruit for ketogenic and low-carb diets. They also help absorb fat-soluble vitamins from other foods like A, D, E, and K, which many people are deficient in due to compromised gallbladder function or fat malabsorption. Then there's the lemon, which, although rarely eaten whole, serves as one of the most beneficial fruits you can add to your diet. Lemons are high in vitamin C, bioflavonoids, and citric acid, which not only boost immune health but also stimulate bile production and aid digestion. A squeeze of lemon in water can assist in alkalizing the body's tissues, supporting kidney detox, and reducing uric acid levels that lead to conditions like gout. Moreover, lemons play a role in helping the body maintain collagen integrity, making them excellent for skin health, joint strength, and blood vessel elasticity. Olives, often ignored as a fruit, are another ketogenic friendly option that delivers tremendous health benefits without sugar. They contain oleuropein, a compound that supports cardiovascular health, reduces blood pressure, and possesses strong antimicrobial properties. The healthy fats in olives provide a sustained energy source without affecting blood sugar, and their anti-inflammatory properties make them valuable for people dealing with arthritis, metabolic dysfunction, or skin conditions. When selecting low sugar fruits, it's crucial to look for those that grow in season, in the right climate, and in as close to their wild form as possible. This ensures they retain their original nutrient profile and haven't been hybridized into sugar dense imitations. Organic options are preferred not just because they lack pesticide residues, but because they tend to be higher in polyphenols and antioxidants. Plants naturally produce more protective compounds when they aren't shielded by synthetic chemicals. Low sugar, high nutrient fruits are also ideal for breaking a fast or coming out of ketosis in a controlled manner, as they offer a gentle reintroduction to carbohydrates without causing a metabolic crash. They pair beautifully with healthy fats like coconut cream, nut butters, or raw yogurt, creating balanced meals that satisfy hunger, support hormone balance, and keep you in a fat-burning, anti-inflammatory state for longer periods. The fruit myth is one of the most deeply ingrained nutritional misconceptions in modern society, perpetuated by decades of marketing, outdated food pyramids, and oversimplified health advice that lumps all fruits into the same healthy category without distinguishing between their drastically different metabolic effects. The truth is, the idea that all fruit is inherently good for you is a narrative rooted more in romanticized tradition than in biological reality. Yes, fruit in its wild, original form played a seasonal role in ancestral diets, providing essential nutrients during specific times of the year when other food sources were scarce. But that's a far cry from the massive, sugar-loaded, commercially engineered fruits we find on supermarket shelves today. What most people don't realize is that modern fruit has been hybridized and selectively bred for decades, not for nutrient density, but for sweetness, size, and visual appeal. This process has dramatically altered the nutritional profile of most fruits, increasing their fructose content while reducing fiber, phytonutrients, and even bitterness. The very compounds that once acted as natural blood sugar regulators and defense mechanisms for the body. Take apples, for example. A wild apple centuries ago was small, tart, fibrous, and contained a fraction of the sugar found in today's varieties like Fuji or Honey Crisp, which have been cultivated to taste like candy. One large Honey Crisp apple can contain up to 25 grams of sugar, most of it fructose, and very little fiber, meaning it's metabolized rapidly and floods the liver with sugar that's quickly converted into triglycerides. This contributes to fatty liver, elevated insulin, and increased visceral fat storage. And yet, we continue to hand these sugar-saturated fruits to children, diabetics, and weight-conscious individuals under the assumption that it's a smart and safe snack, when in reality, it behaves very similarly to a dessert on a hormonal level. The problem deepens when fruit is consumed in juice or smoothie form, which is how many health-conscious people begin their day. An all-fruit smoothie made with bananas, mangoes, pineapples, and orange juice can easily exceed 50 grams of sugar in a single serving, often without any fat or protein to slow absorption. Without the buffer of fiber, the natural sugars in these drinks enter the bloodstream even faster than soda, spiking insulin and placing an enormous burden on the pancreas. Over time, this leads to insulin resistance, energy crashes, sugar cravings, and a metabolic state that promotes fat storage rather than fat burning. And what's worse is that fruit sugar, primarily in the form of fructose, doesn't trigger satiety hormones the way glucose does. So even though you're consuming a high amount of calories and sugar, your brain doesn't fully register that you're full. making you more likely to overeat throughout the day. Many people also believe that fruit is their primary source of essential vitamins like vitamin C, but this is another half-truth. While citrus fruits and berries do contain vitamin C, you can get equal or greater amounts from vegetables like bell peppers, kale, broccoli, and parsley without the sugar overload. Vegetables provide a broader spectrum of minerals, more fiber, and far fewer calories, making them a more efficient and blood sugar friendly way to meet your nutritional needs. Another layer of the fruit myth is the belief that fruit detoxifies the body or flushes toxins, a claim often repeated in juice cleanses and detox protocols. The reality is that your liver is your primary detox organ. And while fruit does contain antioxidants, these are often outweighed by the burden of excess sugar, which can actually impair liver function when consumed frequently. Ironically, people who do fruit-based cleanses in an attempt to heal their liver may be worsening the very condition they're trying to fix, especially if they're dealing with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease or prediabetes, which are directly aggravated by fructose. Even in the context of weight loss, fruit can be a hidden saboteur. Many popular diets emphasize fruit as a free food that doesn't need to be tracked or limited, but the reality is that a few servings of high sugar fruit per day can completely derail ketosis, elevate insulin, and stall fat loss for days. For someone trying to lose weight, stabilize mood, reduce inflammation, or reverse insulin resistance, fruit must be chosen strategically, if not limited altogether. And this brings us to the cultural and emotional layer of the fruit myth. People don't just eat fruit for nutrition, they eat it because they've been conditioned to associate it with purity, nature, and moral virtue. It's the first thing people reach for when they want to eat clean, and it's the last thing they expect to give up when trying to improve their health. But just because something grows on a tree doesn't mean it's good for your biochemistry, especially in the quantities and forms we consume it today. There's a massive difference between having a handful of wild blueberries in season and snacking on dried mango or drinking a tall glass of pasteurized apple juice every afternoon. One supports your health goals, the other undermines them while disguising itself as health food. The modern fruit myth survives because it feels safe, nostalgic, and natural. But the current reality of fruit production and consumption makes it a dangerous blind spot in the average diet, especially for those trying to regain hormonal balance, manage blood sugar, lose weight, or reverse chronic illness. Seasonal eating matters more than most people realize, not just for environmental or agricultural reasons, but because your body's biology is deeply tied to the rhythms of nature, and consuming foods out of season disrupts those ancient metabolic codes. For thousands of years, human beings ate only what was locally available and only when it was naturally produced, meaning fruit was consumed in late summer and early autumn when it was ripe and abundant, while winters were low-carb, high-fat periods driven by necessity. That cycle aligned perfectly with the body's evolutionary programming. Fruits were high in fructose, which triggered fat storage in preparation for the leaner months ahead, while the cold season forced the body to tap into fat stores and operate in a state of mild ketosis. But today, because of modern agricultural technologies, refrigeration, international shipping, and food preservation, people have access to high sugar fruits like bananas, grapes, mangoes, and pineapples every day of the year, completely overriding the biological mechanism designed to handle them only during short seasonal windows. This has profound implications for insulin regulation, fat storage, energy balance, and hormonal timing, all of which are influenced by the types of foods you eat and when you eat them. For example, fructose, found in abundance in many tropical fruits, was meant to be consumed briefly, triggering a spike in uric acid and a drop in ATP production, which in turn encouraged the body to store fat more efficiently for the coming winter. That mechanism makes sense in a natural setting. It's survival-oriented. But when you consume fructose year-round, that survival strategy becomes pathological, leading to chronic fat accumulation, insulin resistance, and liver dysfunction. Your liver, which is already working overtime dealing with environmental toxins, processed foods, and stress hormones, is then burdened further by a constant influx of fructose that it's not equipped to handle on a daily basis. This is part of why so many people in modern society develop non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, even if they don't drink alcohol. They're eating seasonally inappropriate foods that send the wrong signals to their endocrine and digestive systems. Seasonal eating also affects your circadian rhythms and melatonin cycles. For instance, when you eat fruits that are naturally harvested in summer, like berries or watermelon, you're also getting a message that it's light out longer, that the days are warmer, and that energy should be stored, not burned. But if you eat those same fruits in the dead of winter, when your body is supposed to be in a low insulin fat burning mode, you're creating an internal conflict between environmental cues and dietary signals. The result is disrupted sleep, hormonal imbalances, and metabolic confusion. Your body doesn't know whether it should be burning fat or storing it, whether it's summer or winter, whether it should upregulate serotonin or downregulate cortisol. This confusion shows up as fatigue, mood swings, weight gain, sugar cravings, and even thyroid dysfunction. The thyroid, which is highly sensitive to seasonal light exposure and food availability, takes its cues from what you put into your body. Eating out-of-season foods, especially high fructose fruits, can make the thyroid downshift, assuming the body is entering a fat dissolve phase rather than a fat burning one. And for people who already have sluggish thyroid function, this can be a major roadblock to weight loss and energy restoration. Moreover, many of the benefits of fruits are actually enhanced when they are consumed in the context of seasonal timing. Fruits picked at their peak contain higher levels of polyphenols, antioxidants, and enzymes because they've been allowed to ripen naturally in the sun. These compounds protect your cells from oxidative stress, but their production is closely linked to environmental factors like soil quality, sunlight, and rainfall. Fruits grown out of season, especially those imported from other countries or grown under artificial light in greenhouses, often have fewer nutrients and more pesticides to preserve shelf life. Eating seasonally ensures you're getting the fruit as nature intended, nutrient-rich, enzyme-active, and metabolically appropriate. There's also a gut microbiome component to this. Your gut flora adapts to seasonal food availability. In winter, your microbiome shifts toward processing fats and proteins more efficiently, while in summer, it adapts to higher fiber and fruit sugars. When you disrupt that cycle by feeding your body sweet tropical fruits in cold, low light months, you're disrupting microbial diversity and encouraging overgrowth of sugar loving bacteria like Candida and certain strains of Firmicutes, which are directly linked to fat gain and inflammation. This microbial imbalance can result in poor nutrient absorption, leaky gut, and systemic inflammation, especially when coupled with other modern stressors like sleep deprivation, processed food, and environmental toxins. Another layer is the psychological and appetite regulation aspect. Seasonal eating promotes natural appetite control. In colder months, you naturally gravitate toward heavier, warming foods that are higher in fats and proteins, which are more satiating and stabilize blood sugar. In warmer months, lighter fruits and vegetables make sense because they hydrate, cool, and provide quick energy. But if you constantly override this natural tendency, snacking on watermelon in January or blending mango smoothies in December, you confuse the appetite regulating hormones leptin and ghrelin, leading to disordered hunger cues, emotional eating, and irregular energy levels throughout the day. Ketogenic compatibility is one of the most misunderstood concepts when it comes to fruit consumption, especially among those who are trying to transition into or maintain a state of nutritional ketosis. Most people assume that just because a food is natural, organic, or plant-based, it automatically fits into a ketogenic framework, but that's far from the truth when it comes to fruit. The ketogenic diet is designed to dramatically lower carbohydrate intake, forcing the body to shift from burning glucose to burning fat for fuel, a metabolic state known as ketosis. For this process to occur efficiently, insulin levels must remain low because insulin is the key hormone that shuts off fat burning. Any significant spike in insulin, even from natural sugars like fructose or glucose, can halt ketogenesis and throw the body back into sugar burning mode for hours, sometimes even days. The issue with most fruits is not just the amount of sugar they contain, but the form that sugar takes and how rapidly it's absorbed into the bloodstream. Fruit like bananas, mangoes, grapes, and pineapple are loaded with simple sugars and have a high glycemic load, which means they spike insulin fast, kicking you out of ketosis almost instantly. Even worse, fructose, the dominant sugar in most fruits, is processed almost exclusively by the liver, where it gets rapidly converted into triglycerides and stored as fat. This is particularly problematic for someone on a ketogenic diet because the whole purpose of keto is to reverse fatty liver, reduce insulin, and retrain the body to become metabolically flexible. When you introduce high fructose fruits into a keto lifestyle, you're essentially working against the very mechanisms the diet is trying to heal. On the flip side, there are certain fruits that are extremely compatible with a ketogenic approach. Fruits that are low in sugar, high in fiber, and rich in nutrients that support cellular detox, mitochondrial repair, and hormone regulation without triggering an insulin response. The most keto-compatible fruit is, without a doubt, the avocado. Technically a fruit, the avocado is incredibly low in carbs, loaded with monounsaturated fats, and packed with potassium, magnesium, and B vitamins, all of which support fat metabolism, stabilize blood sugar, and enhance liver detoxification. Avocados have a glycemic index of almost zero, meaning they don't spike insulin, and their high fat content actually supports the body's transition into deeper ketosis. They're also rich in glutathione, a master antioxidant that helps repair liver tissue and neutralize oxidative stress, which is especially beneficial for those recovering from years of carb and sugar abuse. Another excellent keto fruit is the olive, which is often overlooked but incredibly powerful. Like the avocado, olives are high in healthy fats and virtually free of sugar. They contain compounds like oleuropein and hydroxytyrosol, which support cardiovascular health, reduce inflammation, and improve insulin sensitivity. Because olives also contain bitter polyphenols, they stimulate bile production and support gallbladder function, something many people on a high-fat diet desperately need, especially if they've been consuming low-fat foods for decades and their gallbladder has become sluggish or congested. Berries, specifically raspberries, blackberries, and strawberries, can also fit into a ketogenic diet when consumed in moderation. These fruits are low on the glycemic index and rich in fiber, which slows the absorption of sugar and blunts the insulin response. They also contain anthocyanins and other polyphenols that protect brain function, reduce inflammation, and support blood vessel integrity. However, portion control is critical here. While half a cup of berries can enhance a keto diet with antioxidants and flavor, going overboard can easily raise your carb count and affect ketone production. One of the biggest mistakes people make when doing dirty keto is assuming that as long as a food is low in carbs, it doesn't matter what it is. But true ketogenic compatibility goes beyond the carb count. It considers how a food affects hormones, liver function, cellular energy, and long-term metabolic flexibility. For example, even fruits like lemons and limes, which are tart and rarely eaten whole, are incredibly keto-friendly. Their citric acid content helps lower blood sugar, improve mineral absorption, and stimulate digestive enzymes that make fat metabolism more efficient. A squeeze of lemon in water before meals can improve insulin sensitivity and reduce postprandial glucose spikes, supporting ketosis indirectly by minimizing the body's need to secrete insulin in the first place. The ketogenic framework also requires an understanding of timing and context. Some fruits that might be too high in sugar for strict keto can still be utilized during strategic carb cycling, refeed days, or after intense workouts when glycogen stores are depleted and insulin sensitivity is temporarily heightened. In those cases, choosing a lower fructose fruit like a green apple or kiwi may be appropriate in small amounts, especially when paired with protein or fat to buffer the glycemic impact. But for most people, especially those in the early stages of keto adaptation or dealing with insulin resistance, the safest path is to focus on fruits that promote ketogenesis rather than interrupt it. This means favoring high fat, low sugar options that nourish the liver, stabilize blood sugar, and help the body stay in a state of clean, consistent fat burning without the metabolic confusion that sugary fruits can cause. Glycemic load and fat storage are intimately connected through a cascade of hormonal events that the average person is never taught to recognize, yet they dictate everything from energy levels to weight gain, hunger patterns, and even chronic disease development. Glycemic load, GL, differs from glycemic index, GI, in that it takes into account not just how fast a carbohydrate raises blood sugar, but also how much of that carbohydrate is present in a standard serving, making it a far more accurate and realistic measurement of a food's effect on your metabolism. And what many people fail to understand is that it's not just about how fast a fruit or carbohydrate spikes blood sugar. It's about the total insulin burden it creates and how that translates into either energy utilization or fat accumulation. When you consume a fruit or a so-called healthy carb that has a high glycemic load, think bananas, dates, watermelon, or even raisins, you're sending a clear signal to your pancreas to release a substantial amount of insulin to manage the blood sugar surge. Insulin is an anabolic hormone, meaning its job is to store nutrients, store sugar, store fat. And while that function is necessary in small doses, when insulin is chronically elevated, your body enters a metabolic state of storage rather than burning. It becomes locked into lipogenesis, the process of converting excess glucose into fatty acids and storing it in adipose tissue, particularly around the liver and visceral organs. This is why people who eat large quantities of fruit, smoothies, juices, or starchy carbs, especially with every meal, often struggle with stubborn belly fat, fatigue, and blood sugar instability, even when they're consuming what they believe to be clean or plant-based diets. High glycemic load fruits like pineapples, grapes, mangoes, and figs dump glucose and fructose into the bloodstream faster than your cells can use it, especially if you're sedentary or insulin resistant. As blood sugar rises, insulin rushes in to shovel that sugar into muscle and liver cells, but once those storage tanks are full, which they often are in most people, your body has no choice but to convert the overflow into fat. Worse, the insulin spike also suppresses fat oxidation, meaning the moment insulin rises, fat burning shuts off like a switch. So even if you're eating healthy fats in the same meal, your body won't utilize them for fuel as long as insulin is elevated. This is critical to understand because you could be eating a seemingly balanced meal, a bowl of yogurt topped with bananas and granola, for example, but the high glycemic load of that meal pushes insulin so high that you not only store the sugar as fat, but you also block access to your existing fat stores, keeping you in a perpetual state of energy storage rather than utilization. The problem compounds when this happens meal after meal, day after day. Chronically elevated insulin from repeated high glycemic load eating trains your fat cells to become more sensitive to insulin while your muscle cells become resistant. This imbalance is what leads to insulin resistance, a state where your body needs more and more insulin just to do the same job, which leads to more fat storage, more inflammation, and more metabolic dysfunction. Your waistline expands, your energy crashes, and your hunger increases. Because insulin not only stores fat, it also blocks leptin, the hormone that tells your brain you're full. This is why people who eat high glycemic load diets often feel constantly hungry, crave more sugar, and find it nearly impossible to fast or go more than a few hours without snacking. It's not a willpower issue, it's a hormonal hijack. And fruits with a high glycemic load are a big part of that problem, especially when they're stripped of their fiber and consumed in concentrated forms like juice, dried fruit, or fruit puree. These forms hit your bloodstream even faster than whole fruit, creating sharp blood sugar spikes and equally sharp crashes, which trigger hunger and cravings shortly afterward. This cycle becomes especially damaging when paired with a sedentary lifestyle or when consumed late at night, as insulin sensitivity is naturally lower in the evening. Your body is less equipped to process glucose after dark, meaning those high glycemic fruits consumed after dinner are more likely to be stored as fat. Even seemingly innocent snacks like a few slices of watermelon before bed or a small bowl of grapes while watching TV can be enough to elevate insulin during the time when your body should be focusing on cellular repair and fat metabolism. The hormonal consequence of glycemic load goes beyond fat storage. It affects cortisol, growth hormone, and thyroid function as well. High insulin suppresses growth hormone, the body's primary fat burning and anti aging hormone, which is most active during deep sleep and fasting states. By eating high glycemic load foods throughout the day, especially in the evening, you blunt growth hormone production, impair deep restorative sleep, and wake up with elevated cortisol and a slower metabolism the next morning, creating a downward spiral of fat storage and hormonal chaos that gets worse over time, especially as you age or go through hormonal transitions like perimenopause or andropause.